My first musical memories are basically from my father's record collection. He was collecting jazz and had brought home some LPs from America as early as 1952, 53, I guess.
Baby, I can't help but cry since the day you said goodbye.
The Swede Jonas Bernholm is the man who did more than anybody to bring out the truth about the originators of rock and roll and to bring their music to the public ear. His record labels were some of the only ones in history whose primary goal was not to profiteer from these original rockers, but to honor them and give them credit and to document the historical value of their work.
In 1963 I went to England for a language course during the summer, and I was lucky enough to see the Beatles live in Margate, a coast resort town in the south of England. And they were quite good, much better than anything I'd seen before. Late in 1964, I heard Otis Redding on the Swedish radio. I think it was That's How Strong My Love Is.
I go with love most everywhere. I'll be the moon when the sun goes down, just to let you know that I'm still around.
So I started buying soul records, even more than the blues recordings. And I was lucky enough to see the Teenage American International movie with James Brown at the Swedish cinema, where it was running for 1 week only for a very limited crowd. But the real important event was definitely the Stax Volt Tour, which arrived in Sweden in 1967. That was a fantastic show. The best I had seen so far, and the best I've seen since. Top performers, everything was just fantastic. So I made up my mind to go to America as soon as possible and see more soul artists live. And in early June of 1968, I arrived in New York and went to the Apollo Theater immediately. That was one of the few addresses I had in America. The other two were Chess Records in Chicago and Stax at East Macklemore in Memphis. And I was fortunate enough to meet mentors also during my trip. I met George Leaner in Chicago, who gave me a long list of important people. Estelle Axton in Memphis took care of me and drove me around. And in Houston, Evelyn Johnson, chief of the Buffalo booking agency and working at Duke Records, took care of me there. And I saw some fantastic shows with, for example, Tina Turner, Ike and Tina Turner in Los Angeles, and also an interesting performance by Michael Jackson in Chicago with his brothers. And this was about 1 year before he was discovered by the Tamla Motown label. I was at home with the Hugh Piano Smith. I was looking for Professor Longhair in New Orleans, and eventually met his greatest disciple.
Why should I feel discouraged?
In Chicago, I went to a school concert. There was an unannounced guest that night. It was a gospel concert, and the artist turned out to be Mahalia Jackson. And when she started singing, the people went absolutely crazy. So I realized the importance of gospel, and I also, after a few years, realized that gospel is really the foundation of American music. In 1975, me and Per Nothin and Bengt Weine, two friends of mine, we got together and discussed the possibility of forming a record label. And Per Nothin had interviewed Floyd Dixon when he was in Sweden on a tour, and we also had a lot of 78 recordings with Floyd Dixon. So that became the very first release on the newly formed Route 66 label. And we were quite fortunate because Floyd Dixon knew a lot of people on the West Coast especially. So he became our first talent scout. And soon we also had contact with Roy Brown, Charles Brown, and other artists that we had planned for future releases.
Well, I'm a mighty, mighty man, young and I'm in my prime. Yes, I'm a mighty, mighty man, I'm young and I'm in my prime. Well, I don't pick no jobs, I'm ready for any old kind. Well, I'm a real young man, a brand new 20.
The records were perfectly legal in Sweden. A recording is only protected for 25 years. And we also paid the publishing through the usual channels, and we also signed special contracts with the artists, because I had realized long ago that the artists were dissatisfied with their original contracts and the royalties they received. So we started sending them money, and the records were also selling quite good, like the second Roy Brown in particular. And when Roy called me up, I realized that he was available for a tour, and also his voice sounded very clear and good on the phone, so I immediately booked him. The first tour with Roy Brown was highly successful. There were a lot of write-ups, and he proved to be a fantastic performer also. Very clearly, perhaps the best in the 40s, alongside Wynonie Harris, I think. So this was a fantastic start, both of the touring plus also for the record releases. And in the next couple of years, we had records out by Wynonie Harris, Ivor Joe Hunter, and Charles Brown. And next year, in 1979, Charles Brown came here, and then the following years followed Ruth Brown, Floyd Dixon, Preston Love, Chuck Norris, Jim McCracklin, Roscoe Gordon, and Nappy Brown in 1983. All in all, we released 180 LPs, and I also started several other labels. There was one label for saxophone R&B called Saxophonograph. Another was formed for doo-wop called Dr. Horse. Jukebox Lil was for 40s rhythm and blues. Gospel Jubilee and Clank-a-Lanka was for gospel recordings. And a lot of people also volunteered to help, and in all there were about 200 people who in one way or other were important in getting these LPs together. And we also got 2 Grammy nominations in the historical field. There was a prize in Montreux for LP of the Year or Reissue LP of the Year. And the reviews were very good. In fact, I never had to advertise the albums, as they got so good reviews that they sold themselves basically. After 15 years, we had pretty much rediscovered and released records with all the major rhythm and blues artists, and also the competition from CDs plus other record labels in the same field who had come after us, and they were not paying the artist royalties or having such an expensive gatefold sleeves that we had. So the competition was getting heavy too. So in 1991, I released the last album. And looking back, I think the most important things were giving rhythm and blues its right place in history, and giving the best artists a new career, and also the rediscovery of Billy Wright, who was Little Richard's mentor.